Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick, and I am joined by my good friend once again, Aram in Toronto. What's up, Aram?
Hello. I gotta say, I'm more like nervous in Toronto. We've been waiting for this finals to start, and the nerves are building, the anxiety is building. But I guess I'm just excited. I think before we get into all the craziness and like, especially when the games start, we'll be like, come on, really losing our minds, yelling at the TV. I think we did this kind of like towards the end of the Dallas series, but just really quickly, man, I just am appreciating this run, like what it means historically and what it means as a fan. And, it never seemed like it was going to happen again. And for this run to be happening, obviously, I really want to win. Like, I really want to win, but I'm also appreciating the journey. And it feels like the old heads, Steph, Klay, and Dre are really appreciating it too. Like, I was so ready after the Memphis series. I'm like, here we go. Come on, bring it, Draymond. Talk about these young dudes who you quote unquote put in their place, right? And he had nothing but praise. And I think it's cool to see them appreciating the journey too. And I think Andre Iguodala was talking about that, talking to Moody and JK about like appreciating this moment, and that in some of those previous finals runs, he said he has like no pictures, no memorabilia. So, I think, I'm older as a Warriors fan too. So just trying to appreciate this and, cheering for Looney and when he gets an offensive rebound, and it's kind of like these little moments,
Yeah, throughout this playoff run, I've talked about how thankful and appreciative. I think in the last episode where I just gave some thoughts on this upcoming final series, I was like, man, I'm just very, very thankful that we get to see this again, because you're right. Like after KD tore his Achilles and Klay tore his ACL, it felt like it was over, and it felt like such a sudden thing. It was like traumatic for everybody, everybody who cared about the Warriors. And it was a terrible way to shut down Oracle, right? It was like such a bad omen. And, I feel like at that point, it was something that, we questioned whether or not it would get to this point again, that this team would be this good again. However, I will say, I will say that like one thing that, as I've done this podcast really, really regularly for the last couple seasons, I mean, we've talked about this, man. We've talked about this. I know you didn't start coming out to the show until last summer, but offline, we've talked about this, that the whole plan has been in motion. The specifics of all that, sure. But like we just even looking at last season, it was like all about this season, right? That's what it was. Once Klay went down, and once you realized Kelly Oubre just ain't it, Brad Wanamaker just ain't it, Alan Smailagic just ain't it, that we knew that it was like building for the following season, and that's this season. And there've been bumps in the road, but more or less like the end goal of the plan, mission is not accomplished, goal hasn't been fully reached, but to get back to this level, it has happened. It's what we wanted. And honestly, that hope, we always talk about sports fandom is about hope. Like that's what helped me like really, really keep going and want to do this, right? If we go back to like 1997 and we're rolling out Muggsy, Bimbo, Terry Cummings, whatever, then maybe I'll take a few more nights off, right? But the excitement of seeing it build and just seeing anything organically grow, that's what some of the most satisfying parts of this whole experience has been, just as a fan and as a podcaster covering this team,
Yeah, and I think it's also really highlighting, and people have talked about this, but you put it in a historic NBA context. Like you and I, our kind of basketball formative years were definitely Lakers run in the 80s, Bulls run in the 90s. Like this is on par with those, right? In
Oh yeah.
terms of like number of finals visits. And it's also the hope too, like you're saying, the hope that, well, this has been a great run and it ain't over yet, right? Like,
Nope.
like there's lots of hope for the future as well. Like next season, these young dudes only getting better. I mean, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. We're here to talk about this series, but
But we can get ahead of ourselves because we were right before. Right? It's like even just like last summer when we were doing all the fun draft stuff, which to this day is still like that was the most fun because we had 2 lottery picks and just that's never going to happen probably again. Like the scenario, like having a 3 Hall of Famers and then getting 2 more lottery picks after having 1 lottery pick the year before. On the show, I've talked about it how like, oh, this team is going to be better next year because if you just take this team as the young guys and say, you take the 4 young dudes, right? Poole, Wiseman, if he's healthy, Kuminga, Moody, and then you throw in maybe like Looney or Wiggins just as like that kind of, been around vet, but still young. If you throw that onto a rebuilding team, you're like, oh, wow, this is a promising team.
Mm-hmm. It's got
but
some
then
pieces,
all of a sudden you throw the fact that they are in the finals with 3, maybe 4 Hall of Famers. And I mean, I've been saying, for a while, like this team will be better. You've said that actually too, because I was like, oh no, this is the year. Like we can get this year. But you've always said like, hey, if it doesn't happen this year, it's actually really about next year, about seeing this team,
Yeah.
So it's just going to move forward. And we did the episode last summer where right after the draft, it's like, who's going to be the best player in a couple years? Steph. In 4 years, Kuminga. Right? Like, and that's saying a lot about this team. So, it's exciting. And the idea that those guys can get rings when they're 19, 20 years old, when they have these old heads to guide them through the process. They have these dudes who've been there and have won things to kind of like, calm the nerves down in this crazy environment. I love that. And if they win the title, then I mean, there's going to be so much chatter about, oh, the Warriors next year. Oh, the Warriors. Oh, like the next decade, stuff that we've talked about, but it's going to be even more for real. And it'll be intense. Like one last thing I'll say is like the interest in this Warriors team that I've seen since I picked up this podcast again at the beginning of the 2020 season is crazy. What I mean? It's crazy because all the spotlights are on them now in the finals and it's like all over the place. So it's just something to really just marvel at, all the eyeballs.
Yeah, it's not just Warriors fans or Dub Nation. It's like it's the NBA, is thriving because of this, right? Because of the interest that, just my neighbors, right? Like they're talking about it, right? Like what do they
like,
care?
Andrew Wiggins is the real deal.
Well, no, I mean, like if you need stars, and these guys have been at the forefront for so long, and so charismatic that this is gonna be really fun finals. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Let's get it started. Okay, we've mentioned the nerves a few times. I've been since the Dallas series ended, and then also the Boston Miami series, which and then also you just want to remember that in our playoff preview, you did call the Warriors would make it to the finals, and to be honest, I thought it was a little bit of a homer take, Patrick, but you were right, because I didn't think they were going to get out of the Western Conference Finals, but you had faith, you had hope, you had all those things. But now that we're here, and then once we knew the Celtics were going to be the opponent, I have been so torn because on the one hand, looking at Celtics personnel and how they match up, seeing some of the games over this year and previous years, I'm like, oh, I'm really worried. And that's my natural disposition as a Warriors fan is to worry, right? And then at the same time, it was like watching Miami come back and almost win that game 7 with nobody except Jimmy Butler, and a couple of, shots here and there by Strus or
You should have taken
Lowry.
the 2, Jimmy Butler.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But and then I see that and I'm like, we ain't losing to these guys, right? So where on that crazy manic spectrum are you falling? Are you extremely confident? Are you extremely worried? Where are you at?
I'm extremely measured, to be honest. I don't know what to expect. I put out an episode where I just had some thoughts on this upcoming series, and all the predictions that I've seen since, it's just all across the board, right? Like there was this thing that I saw on Twitter and that I posted about as well. It's like ESPN's power index says the Celtics have an 86% chance to win, right? I don't know how they calculate that. But then I go on ESPN and like their sports writers, their basketball writers, 15-5 that the Warriors are going to win, right? So it's like, I've never seen anything so kind of disparate. And then the Warriors are favored in Vegas, but then, I mean, so many people, so many experts pick the Celtics. And it's a lot of it, I think, is because a couple things. For one, these two teams are so different from when they actually played during the regular season. Yeah. Right. Like guys were out in like last November, December when the Warriors played in Boston. And then the game in San Francisco, Steph got hurt. Jordan Poole wasn't the Jordan Poole we have now. Draymond was just getting back and he was out of rhythm. Mm-hmm. And Klay was still, inconsistent as hell. And then it's also like, I feel like the team's fan bases have never watched the other team. So they're just going off of like what the other people are saying or like random stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, I saw Jason Tatum play once. He sucks, and like I feel like that's what people say. Or like, oh yeah, the Warriors, they're soft. It's like they don't know the other team at all. So you just get this banter that just fills the airwaves of nonsense. So for me, like I really don't know what to expect. I really question, or I just don't know. Is Jason Tatum that good? I know he's a great player, but is he that guy who's going to like just kill it at the end of the game? Is he the guy who's going to get swatted like he did in the bubble by, I believe it was Bam Adebayo at the end of a game and at the rim on a dunk?
Oh, yeah.
So is he that guy, or is he going to like take a level up? Is he going to be as dependable and as worrisome as LeBron, as Kawhi, as even when we played Kyrie in the finals, or even recently? Do you worry about him as much as you worry about Ja Morant or Luka Doncic?
No. So I mean, here's my thing, right? Like in this run through the West, we've played, I think, arguably people as good, if not better than him, right? In terms of your kind of number one team. Obviously, Tatum made the first team all NBA, but like, if I'm to rank him amongst Jokic, Ja, and Luka, like I'd probably put him third or fourth in that. And like Jokic and Luka would be first, and kind of like a pick 'em between Ja and Tatum. Mm-hmm. But I mean, Tatum's great and he's played great all year. But in terms of somebody who scares me in the last 2 minutes, like, oh my God, like Ja Morant, like he could get
scared the crap out of him.
Yeah. Right. But I think what's the biggest worry though is in that run. I would say Jaylen Brown is probably the best number 2 out of the run that we've had. Who's the best? Like Jokic had nobody. Mm-hmm. Ja had a good supporting cast, but kind of a level below Jaylen Brown. Sorry, So and Luka, who would be the number 2, like Jalen Brunson, who we love his post game, but I'd say Jaylen Brown is better. So I think that's one of the things. The Celtics are going to try to take Curry out, and the Warriors are going to try to take Tatum out. So who is going to be your best number 2, right? And but I don't think Jaylen Brown is Kyrie Irving. I mean, if you remember 2019, like that kind of like combo of Siakam and Lowry just like killed us, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know he's on par with that, and I guess we'll see what is the matchup? Can the Warriors win that? Is Klay going to be better? Is it going to be Poole? Is it going to be Wiggins? I mean, the Warriors have some good options in terms of who is going to be their number two best player, right?
Right.
And I guess, obviously you have to put Draymond in there as well, in terms of the kind of like the game as a whole. He won't be their second best offensive player, obviously, but so yeah, that's kind of my biggest worry. I mean, again, but still, I'm kind of confident. It's like, well, he's no Kyrie and he's not these other dudes, but he's still damn good. The other things that really worry me is, I mean, Marcus Smart is Defensive Player of the Year, and he's super disruptive, super physical. We all know what Draymond does for our team, and that's what he does for them. So that's a problem. Their size and their rim protection, we saw the difference in the Dallas series versus the Memphis series. Like, so many more attempts at the rim, so many more baskets at the rim, just easy against the Mavericks. And it's just not going to be easy, though. We'll see how Robert Williams looks. I think he's the only one that's listed as questionable. So he's a bit banged up. And like you said in your last episode, it's like, meniscus. Like, it doesn't seem like an easy thing to come back from. I am surprised he's playing. And then also, like, their defense is better than anybody we've played. It's kind of like the Ja Morant less Grizzly. Like, their defense was incredible, and this is probably, arguably just as good, maybe better.
Yeah, it's on the Robert Williams thing, man. I'm like, the meniscus. I hope he's not ruining his career.
I know,
because
right?
Regardless of, like, the different types of tears, it's like that just seems like a short time from any kind of surgery like that, right? Where it's like, I don't know if he had it shaved or if he, had it sewn together or whatever we know happens because we've read so much about James Wiseman's knee. but like if he can't go or if he's limited, it's like, it's funny because I know that he's about the same size as Looney, and Looney has had a lot of injuries, but then it's like, oh, okay, well, we'll spot you a guy with a busted meniscus, and so that evens the playing field. Yeah. Again, like, there are all these parts that worry me as well, but it's just a question of, like, is it enough from the Celtics? Like, are they better than the Grizzlies? Plain and simple. Are they? I don't know. I really don't. I think, we know how hard that was, the most worrisome, the toughest matchup and series for the Warriors thus far. And it could be a question. Like, somebody commented on the YouTube channel and on the last episode, and it was just saying, like, Warriors in 5. I think Tatum is overrated. I think, etc. The Warriors should have swept the other two teams. So it's a little, like, very like, oh, the Warriors should do this. But there is the sentiment, like, this Warriors team, as we knew from the very beginning of the playoffs, no one had seen them. And then they showed Denver what they could do. They beat Memphis. They beat Dallas. But it's like, there's a lot of tape on the Warriors now, relatively speaking. And there is, Brad Stevens is still general manager. I don't know if he gives input or whatever, but they got some smart guys over there and some smart players. And they're not just totally young. They have a good mix of young and old. And they've been in big games for the most part. So in terms of Jaylen Brown being, like, a great number 2, he's a great player. I would love to have him on the Warriors. But again, I don't fear him just yet. This is the series where they teach people like me to fear them if they can.
Yep.
Where they put their stamp on things, where they're like, no, we're taking this title. We're going to beat you guys, and you cannot stop us. So, but I agree. Like, the Toronto series, Siakam, Kyle Lowry, I would take them back then over Jaylen Brown right now, especially Siakam back then. But then again, the Warriors are not. I mean, it's debatable. Like, are they better than they were in that series?
They're deeper. They're deeper. Yeah. You definitely take your depth pieces on this roster versus that. But although 2019 Klay was pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's tough. It's a good point. It's like this is Tatum and Brown's opportunity to make themselves be feared, right? Like they didn't really show it, to be honest, in
Yeah, they
their
weren't
Eastern Conference
scary
Finals.
against Miami.
Well, they just kept, you would look up and you're like, yeah, Boston should win this. They're ahead or something like that. And then they would just like kick games away, and like we're no strangers to that either. Um, but are they ready for this? Are they going to become those feared players? I don't know. I mean, that's the intrigue of this.
I sure as hell hope not.
Yeah. You save it for next. This is where you learn the hard lessons. You know what I mean? Because the finals are different. We understand that. But I guess my last like worry, and it's kind of like there's been a lot of like legacy talk, and with a team that has had such an extended run. I mean, you're going to get that people are trying to organize it in put it in perspective historically. But the irony of that is that you're trying to put it in historical perspective with a hot take, so it's kind of it's hard to say. And I'll add my own knee jerk thing to this is that legacy wise, my worry is that this is like, you remember when the Lakers played the Bulls in the first
Yep.
in the first one that the Bulls won.
Yeah.
And it was like, the Lakers had been on their run and then they're kind of like cooked at the end. Right. Mm-hmm. And I don't want that to happen. Right. Like we're not done. And, not that I think that any of, our core vets are going to retire in the next year or something like that. But like, man, Andre no, please, no, don't let this be like that last Magic Johnson finals, because I mean, but it's weird because he was 31 in that finals, right? And Steph is 34.
But it wasn't about Magic playing badly, right? Like it was just the rest of the team wasn't that good, true. And you had Michael Jordan ascending. And I don't think this is that at all because we don't have a bunch of old dudes, I mean, we do, but like, it's not just solely them. Yeah. And I don't think that they are at the end of their powers. It really, like, I want this series as much as anyone, as much as you, but like, and I know this will change once the games start. But like, there's a part of me, and I alluded to this in the last episode, there's a part of me that's like, okay, the Warriors outside of James Wiseman, if they get Gary Payton II, he's tracking to be available soon, Andre, Otto Porter Jr., then you have more or less a healthy Warriors team, right? Mm-hmm. Steph had like a month off, right? Draymond had this 3-month break where he was rehabbing, like, and it's some weird back issue, but still, he saved his legs, I guess. And then, Klay maybe rounding into form a little bit. So they've gotten into the rhythm, right? It was all about like getting into the rhythm during the playoffs in the early rounds. And if this healthy Warriors team, if they don't just screw up like tons of turnovers, 25 turnovers a game or something, and they just don't crap the bed or whatever, if they just get beat, then props to the Celtics for beating a healthy Warriors team. Yeah. That just shows me that the Warriors, that the Celtics team I underestimated. Like, that's kind of how I'm going at it. Once the ball goes up, I'm gonna be like, screw the Celtics.
Yeah, no, totally.
Honestly, right? Like for the 2 losses in the finals, it's the pain of like, for any team that's had an injured player in the playoffs and have something be so critical. Like in 2016, Draymond getting suspended, Steph not being 100%, Bogut being out, Andre having a bad back, and so he had to lay it up, and LeBron blocked it, or then KD and Klay being out in 2019. So, like, that's what hurts the most because, like, only if. So right now, only if, as long as no one gets hurt, that won't come into play. If we get beat, then we get beat. That's all you could ask for. Yeah. And, who knows, if we're getting beat though, I might be like, I probably already have said during the playoffs, Only if we had Wiseman.
I've definitely had those visions in my head, those little lobs, and easy 8 points a game, But no, you're right. I mean, it's important to remember, like, these dudes are tough to beat, and if you beat them, these three dudes, Steph, Klay, and Dre, like, they are like legendary competitors. Like, who's beaten them when they've been healthy? Like, that's a pretty short list, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and you get beat. And we've said over the years, every time that we've talked about any games with stakes, it's like, if you have Steph, you have a chance. You have Draymond, you have a chance. You have Klay, you have a chance. And obviously with the three of them, it's a lot better than a chance. And that's why they're here. So yeah, I mean, it's just a celebration of that too. I'm curious what you think. I mean, you talked a little bit already about, like, the depth pieces, the health, like, those are kind of like givens. I mean, I'm wondering what do you think, as opposed to the biggest worries, like, what is the biggest advantage, and what are a couple of things that you think need to happen?
I think I've seen people toss this aside as not that important, but I do think experience is a factor. I think experience, because even though there's some vets on the Celtics, like, this is the big stage. This isn't the bubble. They're not the conference finals in the bubble or something. And I think that the Warriors vets knowing what it takes, it's not just like them appreciating being there, but it's like they have it in front of them. They're not trying to get through a couple more teams to get to the finals anymore. They are there, right? This is what they've wanted. And I think that there's an extra gear, more or less, at least mentally, that they have to really just say, like, we're here. This is what we've been dreaming of since 2019. We're going to take care of business. I think that's a big part of it. I think putting up with the hype, the bright lights, right? As you're saying, there's 2 days between each game, except games 3 and 4. There's one day off. Like, those are days where the chatter can get to you.
Mm-hmm.
As a young player, as someone who's never been on the stage. And I think those things are important, and they can impart, more or less, hopefully, some of this to the younger guys, right? Like, I always talk about health and seeding and having the new guys and the younger guys acclimated to the bright lights. And those are the keys throughout the season I always talked about. And we've talked about health. Seating sure as hell helped when there were no more one or two seeds in the West, right? Now we have home court, but now it's like the young guys seem like they're ready for the bright lights, but nothing can really emulate being in the finals, from what I've heard, except like having these guys telling you, right? Like, you're going to experience it, you're going to have jitters, but I think that's a massive, massive thing. And people who toss it aside, it's like, sure, maybe not, but I think the Warriors have those intangibles, right? That could push them, give them a little bit more.
And if that experience wins you an extra game
Mm-hmm.
or two, like, that's everything, right?
Yeah,
like
huge.
that's a huge advantage. So no,
Yeah.
I'm there with you too. It's just like, it's just a different beast, right? And I think some of the journalists have mentioned that, and that, like, covering a finals is different. So playing in a finals is completely different in terms of how you prep and the exposure you have and all those kinds of things. I mean, talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but I think we do have some good options for our number 2 best player.
Mm-hmm.
I think that outside of what we kind of expect from Steph, Klay, and Dre, I think what needs to happen is the continued consistency of Wiggins. I mean, he didn't shoot that well in the Dallas series. He didn't shoot that well from 3. I think part of that was really pulled down. He had that 0 for 7 game, but if he can get back to just being consistent two-way Wiggs, and I'm confident he's going to play great defense. He's going to be active. It's incredible to see his transformation. And then just some consistency from Poole.
Yeah.
We've seen every series he kind of gets out really fast, and then he kind of gets shut down. And so maybe he doesn't have to get out so fast, but just be that consistent force off the bench. And I think it's completely possible completely possible. And so it's not like some magic swing that has to happen. Though, these high stakes games, you're always gonna need a little bit of magic. So if we get another some loony magic, that would be great too. But I'm not
Yeah,
counting on it.
yeah. I mean, with Poole, I will take the fast start, right? I will definitely take that
Okay.
because like just with any series that you start at home, I mean, you want those first two. You got to get those
Oh
first
yeah,
two, right? Like
yeah.
that and that changes everything, right? Like I'll have more to say about this when we talk predictions, but it's just like your advantage is if it's this experience and like maybe some guys on the other team being a little bit more like shocked by the grandeur of it all, then it behooves you to just jump on them right
Mm-hmm.
away and smack them in the mouth and really just be like, because another thing in general to me, it's like the mental exercises, right? It's like sowing that doubt in their minds. Like these are the Golden State Warriors, right? And that's why like playing like a team like the Suns would have been relatively comfortable for me because you got Chris Paul, you have JaVale McGee, people who know what this is about. That's why the Memphis Grizzlies were so scary because they didn't give a damn,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it showed in the way they carried themselves and the way they played and the way they fought. Other teams, you could see like it would get to them, right? When I was reading stuff from Dallas media, you could hear it from them. You could hear it in different podcasters' voices. You could hear it, like you could read it in some of the writing, like these are the Warriors, they're just better. And I don't think it was like given up, but like there is that attitude. And I think like if there's any of that in the Celtics' minds, it behooves you to take advantage of that and just jump on them
Yeah,
right away.
yeah, for sure.
The NBA playoff action is nonstop at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. This week, new customers can bet just $5 on any team to win and get $150 in free bets if they do. Looking to turn a small bet into a big payday during the NBA playoffs? With DraftKings same game parlays, you can do just that. Create your own parlay by combining multiple bets like which team will win, total made threes, total rebounds, and more, and boom, you have a shot at an even bigger payout. Right now, all customers can place a same game parlay with 3 or more legs and get a free bet back up to $25 if one leg doesn't hit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TBPN. Bet $5 on any NBA team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. That's promo code TBPN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
All right. Well, so what's your prediction?
Well, I said in the last episode, Warriors in 6, which would require the Warriors to win the final game in Boston.
Yeah.
And it's funny to me, if I could just say, like making predictions on a series and then like, in which game, it's kind of a funny thing, right? Because like if you see two teams that are pretty evenly matched, you'll just say like, Team X in 7.
Yeah.
If you see a team that's a little bit better, you'll say, oh, Team X in 6. If you see a team that's like clearly better, you'll be like, oh, sweep or in 5. But I think a lot of people don't take into account the rhythms and the tempos of a series. And like if you say Warriors in 6, you think about how that plays out, right? Because which two games are the Celtics going to win if you think the Warriors in 6? Are the Warriors gonna win the first two and then the Celtics are gonna take the second two? Are the Celtics gonna take one in San Francisco and the Warriors are gonna have to take, you know what I mean? Like, so, and then you realize like the rhythms are completely different from other series because at that point, if the Warriors take two, then they take say it follows the Dallas rhythm, and then they take one in Dallas, then it's 3-1, and then I'm assuming that the Celtics will beat the Warriors in San Francisco.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's this pressure game that the Warriors are gonna have to take in Boston. So it's kind of random, but like when you think about it really in depth, it's like, oh, what am I actually predicting here? But
Yeah.
I'll say 6. I'll say 6.
Yeah. Okay. On my notes, I left it blank because I'm just like, oh, I don't know. Because I think about all those like, different pathways, right? And like,
Mm-hmm.
well, what if they lose game two? It's okay. They lost game two before. It's okay. I think they definitely have to win game one at home. They have to. I would love an undefeated home season because obviously that means they would win. And I want a nice tidy 5-game series, Warriors in 5. I'm not predicting that. I think it's gonna be akin to that Memphis series, like just like 6 hard fought games. I say Warriors in 6,
Mm-hmm.
or Warriors in 7. Man, I don't know. I mean, again, overconfidence, like. Okay, I'm not gonna say it. That's it. Okay, too superstitious.
Well, so you also say Warriors in 6. Just off the top of your head, like, how do you think? Let's talk about the first 5 games. Like, how do you think it's going to play out? Because it's going to be stressful. A six win, a 6 game series win is going to be stressful. Like, I think that's the big difference that people don't realize. Like, because there's going to be some uncertainty along the way for sure.
Well, there's that stat. I think it's like the Warriors have played in X amount of series where they've won a road game, and I don't see that stopping. So I think they're going to split in San Francisco. I don't like that, but I think they'll split in Boston, and then the Warriors win the last 2.
Whew, that you picked the most stressful type of.
I don't like it, but I think that's real.
Outside of the Warriors going down 0-2, like that's the worst case scenario for me.
Especially if they go down 2-1.
Oh god,
going back to Boston game 4. Oh.
Then it's like the old Memphis series. Yeah, I think the Celtics could take the second game. Hopefully, I mean, we're going to learn a lot more compared to other series and just the rest of this regular season. I feel like there's so many unknowns. So game 1 is going to tell us a lot. It's really, really going to tell us a lot. If all of a sudden the Celtics can stop a lot of the stuff that the Warriors like to do, then we're in trouble, right?
Yeah.
And dream scenario, you said the worst case scenario outside of going down 0-2 for me would be like, okay, the Warriors take the first 2. And then they take 1 in Boston to go up 3-1. And then they lose in SF. Ooh, that would just create such a storm.
I know that's why I want that game 5 win at home. Come on.
Yeah. So I don't know. Can the Warriors just give up home court advantage and then split? Can we just start this in Boston? I feel more comfortable starting in Boston and then winning in 6.
Yeah.
But I will stick with Warriors in 6. Fingers crossed. I'm definitely like anxious about this one, and we'll see. I'm going to be, I was like, oh, should I live stream on YouTube, like watching these games? I don't know. I might, but I just tend to rewind a lot. So I'll be totally like behind and all this other stuff. So
it'll be nice to start, because then, we can get, we can vent some of these emotions out because you have a game to watch. But there's been a lot of like chatter, as there usually is, on about the Warriors, and we don't need to get too much into it. If you want to follow that, go check out Warriors Twitter. But one thing I thought was kind of interesting is how much Draymond, before the Miami Boston series was over, he predicted that it was going to be Boston, right? And he was right. I know Miami was all upset about that. Helped you win another game in your series. If you hear them tell it as motivation, but it's interesting. This whole like broke the code phrase has become part of the playoff like discourse, and it's funny because and to the point where Memphis did a lot of trolling after it, and I think it was Udonis Haslem doing it as well, and it's kind of like, is I mean, maybe I'm a total homer. Well, obviously, but isn't it kind of odd that they are they trolling because they don't believe there actually is a code, or did they just like the phrasing, or like what's going on? Because it seems to be something that people are using like pejoratively or like sarcastically, and it's
Yeah.
like, when Kerr was saying that, he was protecting his player. Regardless of if GP2 says like, oh, we're all good with Dylan Brooks, it's just like it was a dirty play, and there is something to be said about like not ending a dude,
Yeah.
So what's up with this?
It's also because there is that the five fingers of death, Jordan Poole squeezing John Morant's knee, right? And so everybody's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, broke the code."
Yeah.
So they're just. I'm sure people who don't like the Warriors or are competing against the Warriors in the playoff series, they look at Steve Kerr maybe and have a certain idea of who he is and what he represents, and saying stuff like that. It's like they throw back a lot of, from what I've gathered at that time, a lot of like, well, you guys have one of the dirtiest players in the league, Draymond, who isn't really dirty. He's just, he's kind of frustrating if you're an opponent, right?
Yeah.
He's kind of annoying if you're a fan of another team. And he has a long leash. That's it. Like, that's, I would be aggravated by that too. But honestly, like, Draymond's not dirty. He's not cheap, and I think these are people who don't watch him, who just read like, oh, he kicked Steven Adams in the 2016 playoffs, which, if you go back and watch, honestly, I always thought those were like regular basketball plays. Like, he didn't flail or like pull a Chris Paul to that guy on the Pelicans in the first round. He kicked him. Nothing like that. So I think a lot of it is just they're trying to point out hypocrisy, and it is very much just, fan banter back and forth, because they say Dylan Brooks isn't a dirty player. And to me, I think he is, but I say Draymond isn't. I don't watch Dylan Brooks every game. He just seems like annoying, and he has that corny scowl and does silly stuff, right? If he's on your team, you probably like him. So I think a lot of it is just that. And then did Kerr actually use that phrase when Marcus Smart injured Steph?
No.
I know he called it dirty. I don't know if he said broke the code.
No, he didn't say it then. And I think he said it was a dangerous play. He didn't say it was a dirty play.
Yeah,
it was something akin to that. And it was dangerous because like broken a dude's ankle, but it was a basketball play. So
right, because there's a lot of stuff when there's a loose ball. You saw this in the Memphis series when Desmond Bane lost the ball and weirdly dove at Jordan Poole's legs. You see a lot of people, it's like a football fumble, right? Like, that's how they're trained to do it. It seems like in the NBA or growing up or whatever, it's like loose ball. You try to put your body between the guy and the ball. And that's kind of, when you look at the Marcus Smart thing, it's not as clear sometimes, but he did that and he landed on Steph's ankle and his foot. And here we are. Right? Like, at the end of the day, that helped Steph get some rest, possibly.
Yeah.
And the seeding didn't matter in the end. So,
we're good. We're good.
There we are, So thanks, Marcus Smart. I don't know.
I'm curious too. I mean, aside from your predictions, is there anything that you want to happen? So, I was thinking about this because, I've been pretty excited about this and like telling my wife, like, oh, they're back. And, like, this is I really want them to win. This is going to cement Steph's legacy and he needs to win a finals MVP. And, I'm participating in that complete, like, ridiculous discourse, but
you got to embrace that stuff, man.
But that's absolutely what I want to happen. I want it to be like indisputable. These dudes are amongst the best teams of all time. This guy is top 10 in history. And just stop all the nonsense. I mean, my wife was like, those people are always going to say that. And she's probably right. So regardless of what happens, that ridiculous chatter will always be around. But but one can hope. One again, as fans, we can hope that it would stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, what do I want to see? I want to see a win. You know, it's funny on that ESPN basketball writers list of predictions. I didn't look at them all, but I did notice that Bobby Marks said Warriors in 5, Klay Thompson, Finals MVP.
Yeah,
and I think he was just like, screw it, I'm just going to say this, but
it'd be a hell of a story.
I would love
sure.
that. I would love either Klay or Steph getting Finals MVP, obviously for different reasons. Obviously, like if one of them gets it, I would be like, I wish the other person kind of got it. But like, obviously the chatter about Steph not being Finals MVP, never getting that is so silly. But that would be kind of a nice little like, okay, end that for now, and then, but like Klay, because we did that whole episode reliving the 2019 finals, and at the time I thought, and it was totally feasible, that the way Klay was playing in game 6 against the Raptors, that if he brought them back and had just as good of a game in game 7, that he could have been Finals MVP.
Absolutely.
And so for him to come back and then do that, and not only just Klay getting the Finals MVP, because what that would actually have to entail, him like playing amazingly well for at least 3 games and being just like game 6 Klay for 3 games.
Yeah.
So to me, that would be extremely special. Not just like him getting it as if they didn't really know who to give it to, and so let's give it to Klay, but like him really, really earning it, and seeing those highlights and seeing those performances, I think would be amazing. And then Steph outright getting it would be great too.
I'll take any Warrior Finals MVP at this point. If it's Looney,
Moses Moody, Finals MVP.
Moody. Yeah.
JTA Finals MVP would be like
that'd be a whole story.
Improbable story. One thing that I forgot to mention in the episode I did before this was, my keys I talked about were basically like, the Warriors actually being healthy for once, and if they get beat, then they get beat, but at least they are healthy, which is unheard of. And they're healthy in the sense that like, there's no, for the most part, nagging injuries, right? Like you look at like the old Larry Bird Celtics, there's no like, Draymond laying on the ground with a bad back or lingering joint issues right now. So there's that. And then like the turnovers that we all know about, throwing the ball all over the place. But the thing that I forgot to mention, which was another key, and this was a reason why I wanted to play Miami, was because I knew that Steph would be the best player on the court. Yep. No question. He's so much better and impactful than Jimmy Butler. And I said that for this series, it would be a question mark for me, right? Like Steph has not, for the most part, been MVP Steph, right? And again, I don't watch Tatum that much, but all the chatter, all the hype, some of his performances, some of his shooting, you can make the argument that he would be the best player. So like for me, if the Warriors limit their turnovers to like under 15, closer to 10, and they stay relatively healthy, and Steph is clearly the best player of the series, then that's a series the Warriors are going to win.
Yeah, I'll take it.
And, now that I mentioned like the Larry Bird Celtics, it's like everybody talks about this Warriors team kind of emulating the Spurs. And I agree with that. I've talked about that a ton, and we've discussed who's going to be like the bridge piece and et cetera. But, the late 80s Celtics, man, like this is similar, right? Because whereas the Spurs, they stunk for a year and then they ended up with the number 1 pick in Tim Duncan, the Celtics, they were at the peak of their powers, and because of a trade, I forgot what it was, to be honest, they ended up with Len Bias and that tragic story, right? So they were reloading with a guy who people talked about in the same breath as Michael Jordan in college.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So, they reloaded with him, And then, he passed away. And then they got Reggie Lewis, who was, not like a Hall of Famer type. I don't think he could have been. I'm not sure how he would attract, but he passes away. So like, not to bring up these sad tragedies, but like the Celtics were still at the peak at that time, and they were reloading a team that was already a title contender. And that's what this kind of feels like. So maybe a hybrid between the Celtics that never were in the late 80s, early 90s, or 90s in general, to a hybrid between them and the Spurs 20-year era. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great point. I never thought about that. I mean, I think the Warriors in this run, I think they're better than the Spurs. The longevity is maybe not as long yet, right? Because you're talking about Duncan from, what was it, 99 until 20. When did they win their last one? That was a long run, and we should only be so lucky. But just like the concentration of success for the Warriors has been, I think they're better than the Spurs. So
yeah, I do too. If you just look at like, if you put Steph and Tim Duncan as like a wash, I'll take Klay and Draymond over Manu and
certainly more dominant as a team over this run than the Spurs were. So I don't know, man. It's going to be exciting to watch. It's going to be exciting to watch, and very nerve-wracking and hard to sleep afterwards.
Yeah, I'm like I said earlier, I'm a little anxious. I'm excited. I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen. There is a part of me that like, before I started doing this podcast, me, that sometimes I would get superstitious and not watch games. And when we didn't watch, we won. Like, to be honest, I didn't watch the Game 6 Klay game against the Thunder in 2016. I caught those highlights afterwards. I caught like a replay of the game because I was just riding on. This is a superstition I've had since I was a kid, right? In the 80s and everything. And then you forget about it. And then when actually your team, it matters, you're like, oh, you just fall back on those superstitions. Yeah. And then I watched Game 7 of the 2016 finals and we lost. So I was like, never again.
I remember you talking about this now. Yep.
And then I watched the 2019. Anyway, whatever. It's just stupid, superstitious fan stuff. But there's a part of me that like, when I haven't been able to watch the games from the outset, and a couple of these playoff games, I've had to jump in late and catch up because whatever. I'm just like, oh, out of sight, out of mind. I'm so much more relaxed. But we'll see how it goes. I'm sure it'll be interesting. I'm sure we'll be texting back and forth. And if you ever want to, you feel strongly post game, I know the games are late, or even on like a 2-day break between games, if there's something you feel passionately you want to talk about, come on the show.
If we're toasting a finals victory and a JTA finals MVP, I'm definitely going to be on this.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming on. Always good to have you.
Thank you. Let's go Warriors.
All right. Well, that has been another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter at Patrick Epino, EPINO. You can also find Aram at Aram Collier, AramCollier. Check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Oakland Warriors. Check out our website, oaklandwarriors.com, and be sure to tell your fellow Warrior fan friends to tune in and listen. The Oakland Warriors podcast is produced by National Film Society and is a part of the Basketball Podcast Network. And if you're so inclined, please do leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts, and leave us a nice review on Apple Podcasts. That would be hugely appreciated and helpful. Thanks for tuning in. Go Dubs. That's it. Music in this episode provided by Paper Sun. Special thanks to Paul Amardo for production support. See you next time.